Hello, everybody. It's June the 20th, 2025, coming to you live from Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's Into the Fire, the number one true crime podcast on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. And tonight we've got a huge guest, very special guest that I've been trying to get on here for quite some time. He was supposed to be on probably about a month and a half ago, and it was my fault. And so he was kind enough to come back, and it's Jared Bradley, also known as the DNA guy. And we're going to talk M-Vac, which is the microbial vacuum, which is a game changer in the world of DNA, cold cases. And this is the type of a system that they solve cases from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and those type of cold cases, if they're applicable for this kind of thing. This is the kind of system that is really a game changer. Just to let you know about my week this week, I'm wearing this Ya Dig t-shirt. I have to give a special shout out to Keith Terry, the Comet here in Tulsa. He asked me if he could do a little bit of I thought it was like a podcast, but he asked me if I'd be willing to meet with him and kind of do an interview. And lo and behold, I didn't realize I was going to be up on stage with him, but it was really a fun evening last night. And he was nice enough to give me a little bit of swag. So this shirt's really cool. And it was a good time. You know, we got to talk about the homicide unit, the Tulsa Police Department homicide unit, which, I just, we're down to 29. We had 30 unsolved cases since 2016 of our 607 cases that we've had since then. We had 30 that were open, but this last Monday, I actually was able to get charges filed on a 2018 case that I had from back in the day, and we've got somebody in jail on that, and hopefully there'll be more to join them. So now we're down to 29, clearance rate of about 96%. So hopefully this M-Vac machine is going to help us maybe get us to about 98% or greater. So that's what we're hoping for. And but anyway, his company's up in Sandy, Utah, and I think Bill Hansen who's retired from Tucson Police Department is going to be up there as well. So anyway, that's what's been going on. It's been relatively a quiet week, other than the fact that I've been working hard on that case. So, and I'm got a lot of work to do even still. But it's a pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to this episode, and I think that we're going to learn a lot about it. Let's just get right to it. I don't want to waste any of this guy's time. He's the president of this company. So Jared has an extensive background in leadership, sciences, operations, and marketing. He has worked for M-Vac Systems since 2006. He has been the president since 2010. And prior to the M-Vac Systems, he worked in sales and sales management for both small and international corporations such as Pfizer. He also served 14 years with the U.S. Army and Army Reserves, achieving the rank of captain. Thank you for that and your service. Since leading M-Vac Systems into the forensic market, Mr. Bradley has had the opportunity to teach people all over the world about the M-Vac and the wet vacuum DNA collection, including in the UK, Thailand, France, Australia, South Africa, the UAE, Oman, China, and all over the United States. Mr. Bradley has a BS from Brigham Young and an MBA from Strayer University, and he enjoys the outdoors, especially camping and hiking in Utah mountains with his wife and 5 children. I have 5 kids, so we have that in common. Amanda, let's bring out Jared. How's it going? It's good to have you on the show. Huge pleasure.
Hey, Jason, my pleasure, man. It's I've been looking forward to this too. So, yeah, ever since you dogged me, what was that all about?
I double booked. And I was like, holy cow. And he's like, hey, are we still going? And I was like, oh my gosh, holy cow. It's tough when you're your own secretary and you write everything. And I don't really do a lot of, I'm busy like you are too. And you have a podcast as well. So you stay busy and etc. So tell everybody a little bit about just basically the very remedial what is a M-Vac, just to kind of explain it to the general public, and not only that, but to the officer out there that may be listening.
Well, if you understand the dynamics of a carpet cleaner, then as simple as that is, that's essentially what the M-Vac does. It takes a sterile solution, of course, sprays down the liquid onto the surface, and then at the same time, there's a vacuum pressure that's going on, and it just creates like a little mini hurricane down there at the base of on the evidence, right there at the surface, and just between the swirling action, the impinging on the surface with the spray, it enables the DNA to let go of whatever it's attached to, and then it gets collected into a bottle. And then the second step, we concentrate it, so we get rid of all the liquid, and then there's a filter. It's a 50 millimeter filter, so I don't know, the size of a silver dollar, that size, and that collects all the DNA. There, you can see the filter there. That collects all the DNA, and then that filter is actually what the lab processes, which they process essentially the same way they do a swab. So, once they get that down, then it's pretty simple. So it's just a medical grade carpet cleaner.
Yeah, and I think I read somewhere, what did this machine, what was it designed to do originally?
Well, originally it was designed. You guys remember the 1993 E. coli outbreak? It was mostly California, Oregon, and Washington.
Yeah.
Jack in the Box. You actually used to cook their hamburgers to order, and you could order like a medium rare hamburger if you wanted to. Well, there was one time in 1993 that the meat that was going out, on all the hamburgers they sent out to all the chains, was tainted, and it had some E. coli in it. And so hamburger is just ideal for, E. coli to fester and duplicate and multiply. And so by the time it got to the restaurants, which was probably only a couple of days, but it had enough in there that if you didn't have a hamburger that was cooked to 160 degrees or more, which is, I think, medium or medium well, then they had live E. coli in there, and it killed like 6 kids, put 140 people in permanent kidney failure. And it was a really bad. So my dad, being a microbiologist and also growing up in Idaho on a ranch, that really bothered him. So he started analyzing the problem and realized that the upfront collection was really kind of the problem. And that's where he came up with the concept of the M-Vac. And it was originally designed to collect E. coli and salmonella and listeria, things like that, from food surfaces. Going over his notes, some of the things he used to just jot down thoughts about. Forensics was always kind of there, but it was actually about fourth in line. So, originally collecting E. coli, but the food industry really didn't want it. And so, it's one of those where the moral of that story is cook your food.
Yeah.
So, but it was really fortunate. Around 2010-ish, I ran into a college buddy. So I'd gone into the military and he'd gone into the FBI, and he was, how guys, it takes us like 3 minutes to catch up for the last 10 years that we've missed, hanging out with each other. And I was telling him what I was doing, and I was basically describing the M-Vac in the context of collecting E. coli. And he was like, man, that would have been awesome on some of my crime scenes. So I was like, all right. So we took it to a private lab here in Salt Lake City and had them test it for us. And they came back and they were like, man, we've never seen recoveries like this. So it took us a little while, still banging our heads against the food safety wall. And then eventually we just said, screw it. They're never going to use this thing. And so we pivoted in 2012 into forensics, and that's where we've been ever since.
Man, what a story. So when was it difficult? Well, let me tell you this, Jared. So ever since I started researching about this, and I think it was I've known about your system for probably the last 4 or 5 years, where I've at least been exposed to, and I've been in homicide for 16 years. What's amazing to me is that when I go and I speak to other police officers throughout this country, when I'm going, hey, have you ever heard of the M-Vac? What's shocking to me is the amount of people that have never heard of it. And that's amazing to me because it is such a huge piece of equipment that has been such a game changer. And maybe I'm just talking to the wrong people, but do you see that? Do you see that as well?
Well, I gave a presentation early this morning to a cold case conference in Ottawa, Canada. We did it the same way we're doing it here virtually, but the organizer from that basically said only one guy in the entire conference, I think it was like 30, 35 homicide detectives, cold case detectives that were in there. And they said only one of them had even ever heard of it. So this is the most unique market I have ever been in. Two things. Number one, and Jason, you're part of the problem. I mean, so here's what so when you're investigating a homicide, you don't give any details to anybody unless you absolutely have to, right?
For the most part, yes.
Yeah. So cops in general hold their cards really close to their chest. And I think it's just a instinctive reaction when you're an investigator that you just don't share information. And so I think that mindset kind of carries over into forensics equipment. We've been marketing this since 2012 in the forensics market, doing everything from social media to email campaigns to write stories for Forensics Magazine, newspaper articles. It's like we try to get the message out, absolutely blasting it out to everybody we possibly can. Conferences. I can't even tell you how many conferences I've been to in the last 13 years, hundreds and hundreds of conferences. But, it's two things, like I said. One is you guys are really, really good at keeping secrets. And number two is the turnover. I just think that there's, in key positions, whether it be, sergeants that are going, they'll bounce around from, burglary, and then they go to sexual assaults, and then they go to homicide, and then who knows, they'll go, you guys are rotating all the time, and crime scene investigators are rotating all the time, and they just get really super busy and forget to share the information that they got from the last conference they were at. So
yeah,
it's just it's just a battle. It's a constant battle.
Is there a particular area of the country that you really just have, there's just not very many of them? I know that, just for instance, in Oklahoma, there's two of them. We have the second one, and the other one is actually located at a university.
Yeah.
So it's sitting on a shelf, and it's not probably being used other than to show students how to do it.
Right.
And so we're the first police department in the state of Oklahoma because of a presentation that I had put together, and I'm super stoked about it because this is I'll tell you something, Jared. You got two police departments that are watching. You got Oklahoma City and the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation here in our state that are waiting to see what happens with us. And they're watching very closely because if it works for us, then they're going to try to get one as well. I have no doubt.
Yeah.
So, but is there a particular area of the country that you're just really, it's been harder to break into than others?
I don't know. The Midwest is really kind of slow. There's no systems in Missouri. It's crazy. Tennessee just, there's like 4 or 5 in Tennessee now. Several in Arkansas. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
We just put the second one in Alabama. But like Missouri, like I said, there's none there. Iowa just got their first one. So it's just the middle of the country, I think, is a little slower than what I thought, but more than an actual geographic area, I think it's more based on the size of the departments. The really big ones, like NYPD, for example, you would think that they'd have 40 or 50 M-Vacs, just because they have 40,000 officers.
Yeah,
they're branched all over the place into the bureaus, but I've talked to several of the major like CSI supervisors at NYPD, and these guys told me that they are so busy between homicides are clearly the ones that get the most attention, but the between the sexual assaults and just the crime in general, they're so busy. They're like, we do not have time. They said they'll typically 2 hours is how long it takes them to process a homicide.
Wow.
And then they're on to the next one. And so
Yeah.
they're like, we don't have time. We don't have time to M-Vac things. And I find that the really big ones, Dallas PD, Chicago PD, NYPD, LAPD, they're so buried with so much crime that, because they have to go investigate every single burglary, every break-in, every sexual assault, every death in general, even if it's a natural death. There's all sorts of crazy things that they have to, that's pulling their attention. So, you're fortunate that you're in kind of a mid-size type of department where you have enough resources that you can investigate crimes the way they should be investigated. But you're not so busy that it's just, an insanity from the moment you check in till the moment they release you. So
Yeah. Yeah. And really in reality, there is a cost to this machine. I mean, it's nothing's free, but there is a cost. But in the grand scheme of things, really, Jared, police departments pay that much and then some when you're talking about just software for like a phone or like Cellbrites and stuff like that. I mean, really, when you think about it,
yeah.
and just the licensing fee where you don't even have that, and really for minus the cost just for individual tests. I mean, we're looking at probably $150 roughly, right? Per test.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is
As
next
far
to
as
nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you actually purchase the system, ongoing years, like a department the size of Tulsa, I don't know, it'll probably be 3,000 to 5,000 a year, depending on how much you use it.
Yeah. So, which is nothing in the drop of in the grand scheme of things, not to mention the fact of all the overtime hours that it could potentially save, et cetera. So, I noticed I was kind of looking around. You do have that podcast and your podcast, throw that picture up, Amanda. He's got a lot of interesting guests that come on, all things crime, and you have a lot of interesting guests that come on and stuff, and you do talk about other cases. The one case that really kind of jumped out to me, probably more than anything else that I had seen that you were talking a little bit about, was the West Memphis 3. And is that kind of something that, have you been approached on some of these other cases to where you are, they don't have, I wouldn't think that West Memphis is really, rolling in money, but is that kind of like a case that, when you watch things on TV and stuff as well, that you're like, hey, listen, I have this, we're willing to give it a shot. Is that something that is, I'm not trying to open you up for that kind of a world, but
Yeah.
on certain cases, JonBenet Ramsey, those type of things.
Yeah. Well, if you think about across the United States, the really huge ones, O.J. Simpson and JonBenet Ramsey and the Black Dahlia, those kind of cases. The interesting thing about West Memphis 3 is the defendants, the 3 teenagers, there's one in particular named Damian Eccles, and he has, ever since he was released from prison, he has been trying to get his name cleared. Well, I don't even know how the M-Vac was brought into it, but somehow or another, they got pushing. They learned about the M-Vac, and they thought, you know what? Let's see if we can get some funding together, and let's see if we can get some of the evidence that, like the shoelaces that tied up the young boys, their clothing,
Right.
the sticks that was pushed their clothing and stuff down into the mud in that drainage ditch. they thought, you know what, the best way that we could possibly get our name cleared is to test this test this evidence for DNA. And by far the best system that's going to do that is going to be the M-Vac. And so we found out that they were actually pushing the Arkansas Attorney General to and the courts to allow them to do this private testing, and they specifically wanted the M-Vac to be used on the evidence. And so once they actually announced that, and they pushed it in the court documents, then that's when we kind of found out about it, because we started getting inundated with all of these calls and information requests, and we're like, what are you talking about? I had honestly not even really known much about the West Memphis 3 prior to that, but we've kind of got pulled into it. I've been on a number of podcasts, and it's crazy. I'll tell you, the amount of polarizing, of the people that know about the West Memphis 3, they are in guilty and not guilty, and there's very, very few people that are like in between.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're talking about, making any kind of waves in that case on one side or the other, man, it is just the episodes that I've done with guests that have specifically talked about the West Memphis 3. Like I had a friend named George Jared. So his last name is Jared. How amazing is that? Same spelling too. He actually took me out to the crime scene where it actually happened, and he's written extensively about it. But that episode on all things crime, holy crap, the number of people that still comment, like, we'll put a short up or something like that, but whenever anybody stumbles on those episodes, man, you would think I had just insulted their grandmother. I mean, it's amazing how passionate people are about that case. And as far as the M-Vac goes, I just kind of look at it, Jason. I'm like, look, here's my thought. First of all, I don't have a dog in this fight. Whether or not the West Memphis 3, of course I want to see justice done, but whether or not anything actually happens with the case, it's pretty much done. The boys, the people that served, the 3 teenagers that served their time, they could very well just go off and live their lives. But, one of them in particular has chosen to push for this additional DNA testing.
Right.
And my thought is, look, if you are a defendant and you know that your DNA could be on that evidence, the absolute last thing you would ever want to do is get M-Vac testing.
Yeah, because there's nothing any better right now on the planet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if his DNA, if there's even a shred of possibility of his DNA being on the clothing or the shoelaces or anywhere around that crime scene, it would be insane for him to be pushing for M-Vac testing.
Right.
Because
I'm a little surprised there's only one of them out of the 3. I know that.
Well, I think the other 2 have basically just said, you know what, you can kind of be our kind of be the spearhead of this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of I think 2 of them aren't even speaking right now at this point. But yeah, that's a case that I'm absolutely fascinated with, and of course I'm not really in the camp that's thinking they're guilty. Certainly there's somebody else that looks pretty promising out of that deal. I really do hope. Did you do it? Did you do the testing or not? Or did it happen?
Well, we're not going to do the testing.
Okay.
That's we just sell the systems. And
I guess there's plenty of labs that could do it.
Yeah. They're going to be using a private lab somewhere if they ever get it done. The Supreme Court, the Arkansas Supreme Court ordered it ordered the
Good.
evidence released, and it was supposed to happen a long time ago, but still hasn't. So
Wow. I'm
um,
shocked that it hasn't. That's weird. So, yeah. Is there any other kind of major cases like that even rank up to the West Memphis 3 when you're talking about these different cases?
well, a
That
lot of people want to use the M-Vac on like especially the Garrett of John Benet Ramsey.
right,
Um,
right.
yeah, that's I'd love a shot at that.
Oh, I mean, why wouldn't they? I mean, what's the delay? Do they? I
Uh,
mean, do they? Well, I know they have one in Colorado because Doug Thornton's or Doug Young is up there, and
oh yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, how do you
and
know
so
Doug? Doug,
I
yeah,
know.
Doug's a great
Uh,
guy, man. I love that guy.
well, to tell you the truth, Jared, he's the first person that told me about your system, and
Okay.
so he and I attended a class in New York City, the basic medical legal death investigation or advanced, or I've been to all three of the trainings up in New York City at the
Hmm.
ME's office,
Okay.
and that's where I came to meet him, and so he runs Triad Forensics, and he actually has been a guest on this show actually, and while
Okay.
I was speaking up in Broomfield, and while I was up speaking in Broomfield, I gave him a shout, and he goes, "Hey, come by here, come by the department, and I want to show you something." And he goes, "Do you know about the M-Vac?" And I was like, "No." And so he goes, "Come back here, let me show you about this. This thing is great." And then he told me, he goes, "This thing is so incredible. They were able to actually find some DNA on a knife that was in a river." Or at least he told me the story about it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Wow, okay." And so after that, what he had done, Doug says, "Hey, listen, if you ever get a case in Tulsa that is something we can help on, we'll do it for you." And to tell you the truth, the thing about it was, Jared, is that I would sit there and I've messaged him a number of times going, "Hey, we've got this one case," and then getting the detective, just like what you talk about, where tell the detectives about it. "Hey, we should get that and send it up there," and just getting them to do it. They were like, it's like, well, they don't really know about it, so it's not, they don't know the stories about it and
Yeah.
how great the system is, and so that never happened. However, Doug was instrumental. He helped with my argument for this system, and so of course I had a
Oh,
10-minute presentation that I was able to give, and I stretched that to like 20 to 25 minutes and told him how great this thing is and what we can do with this. And I have no doubt that once we get a couple of wins with it, or one win, it's going to rain money as far as donations for this type of a system. And but anyway, so yeah, I think that's really incredible. And so what is the oldest case that you know of that the M-Vac has actually helped solve?
56 years.
Where was that at, and what's the story behind that case?
There's two of them actually. Well, one I can't actually, both of them I can't talk about.
Okay, never mind.
They're-
But 56 years, you were able
yeah,
to get something from
yeah,
it.
they have. So the story behind that is one of them. It's off of clothing, and the reason I can't talk about it is because the uh, the suspect that they've had for 56 years, it turned out it wasn't his DNA, and so it's still an open investigation, even though it's 56 years old. So that's why. But being able to collect DNA from a piece of clothing that was, from a crime from the early, well, let's see, I guess mid 60s.
Mhm.
That's pretty amazing. So
Is there anything that you can't use this machine on? Like
um,
any kind of surfaces you have found is just not a good, it's not a good surface.
well, just dirt, it and it's honestly if there's yeah, if clothing has been the victim was totally decomposed in the clothing, that's really a challenge because it clogs up the filter so bad. Um, but other than that, pretty much anything rocks and bricks. Well, another surface that I wouldn't ever use the M-Vac on is glass, and it's just not designed for it. Like if a little blood spatter or something on glass,
Mhm.
um, and we kind of tell all the investigators that we're training, say, look, if you can actually see the bio stain, whether it be saliva or blood or anything else. You know, pretty
Swab
much,
it.
yeah, anything will really work. And so using the M-Vac on it, you know, it depends on what your protocols are, but using the M-Vac on a saliva stain for example, it's like hitting a mosquito with a sledgehammer. You know, it's just overkill. So now some agencies, especially when they're going for Fisher's PD, I actually put this video together. It's on our YouTube channel. Fisher's PD, they are all about speed, and so they combine a number of technologies. One's called VMD, vacuum metal deposition, where it'll actually, for those of you that have never heard of that, it's a pretty amazing machine where, you know, you can touch like a piece of clothing and you put it in this chamber and it kind of, I don't even know how to say it, but it fumes, basically. It fumes the chamber with different types of metals like silver or gold. And you can see like literally a perfect outline on that clothing of the handprint from, you know, the suspect. And so they'll do that, and then they'll M-Vac that handprint, and then from there they'll go straight into the what's called the rapid hit. It's the rapid DNA system, and if it's a single source, you know, meaning that only one person has donated the DNA from that area, then in 90 minutes they'll have a profile. And then so they'll take just a slice of the M-Vac filter and put it in the rapid, and then they'll keep the rest to send to the lab, you know, for court purposes. But those guys, they M-Vac almost everything, and it's all because they want to be able to collect as much DNA as possible so that it'll go into the rapid, and then hopefully they'll have a good profile. And then instead of waiting months or, you know, even years for the lab to get back results, they have results in 90 minutes, and then their detectives are off and running.
Yeah, I don't know if you knew this or not, but we're state mandated in the state of Oklahoma that by the year 2027, we are going to have that in our department and every other department throughout the state.
Yeah.
And so and correct me if I'm wrong at any point, Jared, because you sound like you really well versed on that. You know, the way they put it to me, and I could be completely wrong, but the way they described this thing is that if you like had a trail of blood, you could literally use that rapid DNA scanner, and then in 90 minutes, it could tell you if that individual was in CODIS. Is that kind of correct, or am I way off on that?
You know, there was a bill that was, and I think our Senator Hatch, actually, so it's called the Hatch bill, that was supposed to be, if it's a clean profile, meaning that there's only one person represented in it, it's supposed to be automatically connected to CODIS. And then, so within 90 minutes, they'd have the profile, and then probably within 30 minutes after that, they'd be able to upload it and compare it to CODIS. So which totally makes sense to me. It's just, you know, the guys at Fisher's PD, they were telling us about an attempted homicide. It should have been a homicide. The guy should have died. He was almost beat to death with a golf club. So they solved that case in 8 hours, meaning that they had the suspect in cuffs in 8 hours. So, you know, you think about that with only evidence, you know, there's no eyewitnesses, nobody confessed. That's just through the evidence. They solved that case in one shift, basically. So it's coming.
What state is that? What state are they in? Because I've never heard of that department.
Indiana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like they're really high tech.
Yeah. They're
That's
just
amazing.
They're just north of Indianapolis, and
Okay.
I'll tell you, that community, they are determined to keep the crime rate really low just because of property values and everything else. And they basically just said, all the crime that typically spills out from the big cities into the suburbs. They're like, we ain't having it. Don't bring that here because we will catch you, and we will catch you really fast, and we'll put you in jail. So
Wow.
yeah,
What what about via the courts? I mean, I wouldn't think that they'd have any issues with this because it's a collection type of a system. It's no different than really getting a swab.
oh, with the
It's-
M-Vac?
yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
had
Well,
any?
initially they did because there just wasn't, it had to go through that whole Daubert Fry hearings.
Right.
But
Right.
there's been even appellate courts have tested the M-Vac, and it's fine. So yeah, there's enough history behind it now, and it's gone through enough court cases that, especially in states like California, Washington, Massachusetts, places where it's going to be really, really strict. Yeah, it's sailed through, and the once the jury really understands it, and the court actually understands it because of the Daubert or Fry hearing, then yeah, I haven't heard of any court that's actually thrown the DNA out.
Well, that's interesting. So this, ladies and gentlemen, if you're, and we get officers that watch this from one end of this country to the other, and even in other countries, if you're watching this and you're interested in learning more, I can tell you this much, that your M-Vac website, the M-Vac systems website, is absolutely full of information and stories and success stories. And it tells you all the, I guess, anything and everything that you could possibly want to know about the system. What's the lifespan of the actual machine itself? I know it would depend upon how often it's used.
Yeah,
Things do wear out, but you guys
Yeah.
do you guys will offer an overhaul on it as well, actually, or maintenance.
yeah. Well, put it this way: of all the years that we've been doing this, I think one machine out of all of our machines that are out there in the last 18 years has actually worn out. So I think it's almost like Michelin tires used to be. We've made it so good that the dang things just don't wear out. So now the vacuum pump by itself is rated for 4,000 hours, and you figure if it takes 10 minutes on average, or 15 or even 20 minutes, that's a lot of testing. So, a department the size of Tulsa, you will both be long retired before that thing wears out for you guys.
Yeah. And let me, one of the things that I'd learned in New York City, and I had no idea, but you could literally fingerprint skin. I mean, the success of it is not necessarily through the roof, but on occasion. So what I visualize for this thing, what I'm thinking about is like, have you had a case, or have you heard of a case to where, like, a strangulation type of a murder, and you're able, and they used the M-Vac directly on the skin of the victim? Has that been tried, or is that, I know you're going to get a mixture likely, but
the interesting thing, so UC Davis actually did an entire study on skin sampling, and so that's, we don't really promote it, but if anybody wants that information, they can find it on our website, or we can send it to them. Yeah, there's a fairly good success rate that you can get from collecting off of a victim's skin.
Really? All right. Well, that's good to know. What would you do? Would you, probably the print method would not be the optimal way. I think the M-Vac would be the way to go, honestly, as opposed to just swabbing the area.
Oh, getting a fingerprint off of skin?
Yeah, it's very, very rare and
I would think
difficult.
that would be really low, as far as because the chance that it wouldn't be smudged would be, I would think it would be really low, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I do. It's just something I've had that done on one homicide where I had a 16-year-old little girl that had been brutally murdered, and I said, I just came from New York, and I said, let's fingerprint her skin, because I thought, it likely the perpetrator probably grabbed her, and let's try it. And the pathologist, because we have to have their permission to do anything like that, and he goes, man, that sounds pretty cool. Let's give it a shot. And what we ended up doing is we just super glued her body as she laid there right there. And and put a little tin over her, and we didn't get anything. But if you don't try, you're not going to get anything either, anyway. So why
Yeah.
not?
Oh yeah, but fingernail clippings.
Yeah.
We've gotten great profiles on those. Jewelry, keys, odd shaped items that you would never think you'd be able to get a good DNA profile from. That's kind of how the shell casing protocols have come around. There's you hand a tool like the M-Vac to a seasoned crime scene investigator and detectives, and it's amazing what some of the things that they can come up with.
Right. And you said something about shell casings, and that's something that in my world, and I worked crime scene before Homicide, and in our world, they were like, there's just no way. I mean, I think that they would tell us that, yeah, you have like a 0.03%. Our lab would, unless it was absolutely last ditch effort, they were like, yeah, we're not doing it. And so now, let's say we have a scene, just kind of, and unfortunately, I didn't go to your training because you probably covered some of this, but let's say you have a scene and you've got like 30 cartridge casings out there on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
How do you work with that in with respect to an M-Vac? Do you take them all and just stick them together and then shoot them with the solution and it goes through the filter, or how does that work?
Yeah, there's a couple of different protocols that are out there, but the one that we actually have the protocol, and so that's the one that we publish. It's from Broward County down in South Florida, and they have developed a method where they process it one at a time, but then they pour it all over the same filter. And so those 30 shells, if there's any DNA on them, the DNA from those 30 shells would go into one filter. Now, I think it would depend on, of course, the way that the crime scene laid out. Are they sure that those 30 shells are from the same weapon, the same guy? But yeah, there's a number of different protocols, and I think the success rate last I heard was 20 to 25%.
Wow.
Which is a huge improvement over, like you said, the 0.001% or whatever it was.
Wow.
Yeah. It's if you're solving 20% of your cases now based on the DNA that's on those shell casings, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, give me a couple of your probably the most interesting cases that your system has been used to really solve a case.
So one of the latest ones that it was solved, I think it was from 1979. So what is that? 40 years basically.
Yeah.
They Kathy Hale was the victim's name. Amanda says 46. So she's straightening me out in real time here. Anyway, Kathy Hale was a 19-year-old girl. She was living in an apartment and left one evening to go pick up her sister and just never made it. And as it turns out, the guy that grabbed her, she grabbed her in the parking lot and took her down to the river there this is in North Aurora, Illinois. So it's kind of a suburb of Chicago, and raped her and killed her and then threw her in the river. She was in the river for 3 weeks. And so, and this isn't a super slow moving river. It's not a raging river like, but it's still a moving river. And she was in there for 3 weeks, and some 12-year-old kid that was fishing actually found her body. What a trauma that 12-year-old would go through. But that one, and they over the years tried multiple, swabbings and cuttings and things like that, and then they used the M-Vac on her underwear, and they said it was a 9.4 trillion level of so it was like one chance in 9.4 trillion that it wasn't the suspect that they had their eye on. So
holy cow, that's crazy.
that's a pretty strong DNA profile.
Yeah. That's like this, the next 40 planets of people. My
Right.
goodness.
Yeah. So that's
All right.
that's the that's after she was in there 3 weeks, and it's 46 years old. So it's just been sitting in an evidence box for 46 years, and they finally were able to solve it. So that's a pretty amazing case.
And if they were doing cuttings on that stuff and it's in a lab, why couldn't they get anything off of that? I mean, do you have I know that that solution's just getting up in that porous material or in between the fabrics and
Yeah.
stuff, and that's what it's doing.
Well, I think the biggest reason is because um, a cutting is only like 1 by 1 centimeter. It's like this big.
Okay.
You can even see that, So just imagine 1 square centimeter is about the largest you can get of a cutting. And so, if you miss it by a couple of fibers, it's just the primary DNA source was just a little bit over, then you missed it. And that's the advantage of the M-Vac is you're right. A cutting. So if you have like a visible stain, like a blood spatter, a little spot of blood on clothing, and they can make a cutting around the entire blood spot, then of course cutting, because you're taking everything with you, is going to be probably more as far as the collection. But again, when you put that material in the extraction tube and you put the liquid in it, so what happens is there's a little 1.5 millimeter or milliliter tube that the lab will put the evidence in, and whether it's the swab or the cutting or whatever, and then they put that in there, and then they put in this liquid that causes the cells to break apart. It's called lysing. And so the cell will break apart, and then they'll spin it. And so everything that's heavier than water, which is all the cell parts, the cell wall and the nucleus and the mitochondria and all that kind of stuff, will all push down to the bottom, and the DNA actually floats to the top because DNA is lighter than water. So that's how they collect it. Well, but then you have to pull all that stuff out. And so, maybe they can get all the DNA out before they pull the cutting or whatever the surface is, but it might bring some of the DNA with it. And so, there's always that chance that they missed it when they got the cutting, especially if it's not a visible stain. And maybe, maybe they lose part of that in the extraction process, who knows, but the ability for the M-Vac to cover a larger surface area. So, like in a sexual assault, I don't want to get too graphic here, but in a sexual assault type of a scenario, a lot of times, the male perpetrator, his DNA is going to be all over her panties. Sometimes it's going to be from, leakage. Sometimes it's going to be when he grabs her waistband and pulls her panties down. There's touch DNA there. There's different scenarios that you can think of that you're going to be able to collect all of that from, using the M-Vac, whereas you're kind of limited on the other methods, especially cutting, because every time you take that 1 square centimeter, that's a different sample. And so, they're pretty good. Labs are pretty amazing. They can do different things with finding out the quantity of DNA they have, the type of DNA, is it male DNA? Is it female DNA? They can combine them. It's pretty amazing. So anyway, that's, in that particular case, like I said, they had tried different DNA types, but until they used the M-Vac, they didn't get it. So fortunately, they were able to get it with the M-Vac. So,
all right. So if there's a department out there, there's an officer out there, crime scene detective or whatever, a homicide guy, and they want to learn more about this, of course, go to your website, start there. And then if they want to talk to anybody, I know that you were kind enough to talk to me when I reached out initially, and then then I talk. You'll talk to anybody. And matter of fact, I heard something really nice about you. Actually, this is the kind of guy that he is. That Cheryl McCollum, who was on here on our episode number 50, and Cheryl was like, "Yeah, he showed up to my Hall of Fame induction," and that's the kind of guy that you are. So. He'll talk to you. I promise you he will do that.
Oh yeah.
If
you know what?
if,
Call our office. You can put our office number out there. It's 801 523 3962. You can call our office anytime, and somebody will pick up the phone. Unless we're on a different line with another officer. You email us, whatever. You can go to our website and fill out an information request, and we'll get back to those as quick as we possibly can. Our entire purpose in life, honestly, is to help detectives and investigators solve cases that otherwise would never get solved. And I'll tell you, Jason, I've been in, like I said, I've been in the military, I've been in sales and a bunch of different companies, and there is nothing that is more satisfying to me than when it's somebody like you calls me up and says, "You are not going to believe what just happened."
Yeah, I hope I have that moment where I'm going to be calling. I already know we are. There's no doubt in my mind, and I'm sure it's priceless. Do you guys do trade? Do you guys do the booths and stuff at conferences with your with your equipment?
Yeah.
And of course, I would assume that you guys also do presentations at various homicide associations all over the place. I would assume, right?
Yeah. We go to every conference we possibly can. AAFS and IAI. We'll go to the California Homicide, Southeast Homicide. We try to go to regional conferences as much as we can. It's just I'm on the road almost every week, and we get to everyone that we can, but we're spread pretty thin as it is. So, but yeah, even if we didn't, that's another reason why I started the All Things Crime, is because we're able to talk to detectives and people that have used the M-Vac and had success with it, and try to blast it out that way. But we're on all the social media, LinkedIn and Instagram, Facebook. We try to put articles into Evidence Magazine and or Forensics Magazine, things like that. So
By the way, if you're an officer, I just want to mention this because you'd mentioned that a couple of times, the Forensic Magazine. If you're law enforcement, you can sign up to that for free. Just go to I think it's forensicmagazine.com, and they publish all kinds of exceptionally great things in that online. It's an online magazine basically, but it's excellent. And that's another thing that I'd actually learned about a lot more about you guys and what you guys are doing. This is really how the cold cases from way back in the day are getting solved. It's the M-Vac, in my opinion. But so that's good. So they speak when they can, and I'm going to put the word out like nobody's business. Trust me. And I'm excited that you came on here, Jared. I really am. I think that this is people need to know about it. And like I said, I'm going to continue to tell people. And you haven't been to the Texas Association or the Homicide Investigators of Texas, or at least if you have, you haven't been there. You haven't been there lately. And I'm going to talk to you and try to twist your arm to join us there. I'm on the committee, and so we might need to have you come and join us there and spread the word for the great state of Texas.
Well, give me a 30-minute speaking spot, and I'll be there, brother.
Well, I'll give you a 2-hour speaking spot if you want it.
Oh my gosh, nobody wants to listen to me for 2 hours. I'll tell you that.
I don't know, but nevertheless, we would certainly we'll talk about it here in a minute for sure. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you guys joining us for this. Remember to like and subscribe. I really want you guys to check out his podcast, and I have watched a few of the episodes. I've already subscribed to it, And I encourage you to check it out. I mean, obviously he's a consummate professional and he knows what he's doing. Is your dad, if you might, is your dad still around? Did he get to see
No,
what
he
it,
actually passed in 2009.
but he did
So
get to see this machine, or this equipment really making a world of difference.
yeah, we didn't pivot into forensics until 2012, but
Oh, okay.
you know what? We feel his presence so much that I
Yeah.
I know he's watching.
Yeah.
That's what matters.
And just out of by chance, if somebody happened to be driving through Sandy, Utah, that was a police officer or law enforcement, are they able to stop by your place and like get a tour of the factory and all this, that, and the other where you guys make these things?
Yeah, I might have to clean up my desk a little bit, but I
Well, listen,
yeah, Wayne is there at the office almost every day, and but yeah, if you just give us a call and let us know you're coming in, you want to see the system, absolutely stop by the office.
all right. Well, listen, I can't think of a better person that's going to be as accessible as he is. It's a great piece of equipment. I was like a kid, man, when on Christmas when all those boxes arrived, I was like, this is awesome. And to be the first police department in the state of Oklahoma to actually have this equipment, that's a big deal. And it really shows the commitment from not only our department, but from our community, willing to spend that kind of money to make this happen. And like I said, when I say that kind of money, it's really pales in comparison to a lot of the other equipment that's out there. And you know what's solving some of these cases worth? I mean, I think it's priceless, and that's what we owe it to the families to be able to use the best possible equipment that's out there. So I also want to give a quick shout out to Ed Wise, basically that his daughter Allison works for the Tulsa Police Department. He is a retired NYPD highway patrolman, and he was kind enough to give me a shirt. And I told him I'd give him a shout out. So thank you very much, Mr. Wise, and thank you, Jared. I appreciate you being here. It means the world to me that you were willing to come on. You're a very, very busy man. And ladies and gentlemen, I the one thing I want you to take away from this, that if you're thinking about doing a crime in the future, because you never know, there could be a killer watching your podcast, Jared. There could be one watching mine. If you're a killer, yeah, or you have killed, you better look out, because I'm telling you, between the flock cameras, between the M-Vac, between just all the other advances that's going on in the world of cell phone technology and everything else. Man, I don't know. I was talking to a DNA guy just recently that down in Texas, and he was telling me in another 10 years, man, you better just don't even think about committing a crime. It's just not going to happen. So
it's almost Gattaca level, man.
it really is. And who knows where we're going to be in another 3 years. In the last 2 years, we're solving cases that we never dreamt of solving. So and that's really encouraging. Anything else? Any final words that you'd like to leave us with?
Oh, it's just an absolute honor, man. I appreciate it. You know, I try to give you a little dig at the very beginning, but you know, the sheer fact that you do this every Friday night is just absolute dedication, man. It's an honor, and any help that anybody can give us to get the word out. You know, like you said, there's still a lot of detectives and a lot of CSIs out there that don't know about the M-Vac that really need to.
Yeah, I agree. And really the reason why I do this, Jared, is it's a healthy habit, and I get to meet people like you that I consider friends now. So I surround myself with just the experts in all these different areas, and it makes me a better detective. So ladies and gentlemen, I can't say enough about this guy. I'll tell you what, if we were to get some DNA off of one of these filters, and yet that we couldn't figure out who he was from that, next week, we're going to have Christine Burke Von Ridden, who is a forensic genealogist, and she's going to join us. And that's what we do after we've used Jared's system and we still can't figure out who the guy is. We'll do a little forensic genealogy and we'll find out who they are after that. And that's going to be an amazing episode next week. Thanks a lot, Jared. Everybody, check out his website. Just go to the website anyway, even if you're a civilian, to just read about it. It's kind of interesting stuff, and they've got a lot of great case studies and so forth. But man, thanks a lot. I appreciate it, everybody. Next week, we will see you Friday at 7. Take us out, Amanda.